Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. Welcome to another chess recap video. Today we are going to analyze a game between Ngong Sammuel from South Sudan and chess master Egesa Emmanuel from Uganda. This game was played during the 5th round of the Kireka Opens, currently underway in Uganda. So the game begins with d4, and then black responds with d5, and then c4 entering into the queen's gambit. Black responds by c6 entering into the Slav defense. Knight to f3 by white. Black plays pawn to f5. Now this move pawn to f5 is not the best move in this position. The best move is actually to push the pawn to e6, and this will force white either to capture or to defend this pawn. Otherwise, if black plays something else, he's going to lose the pawns. Nevertheless, black played f5 during the game. So pawn takes, and then bishop to f4 was played by white. So knight to f6 by black, developing the knight, and then e3 protecting the bishop and opening up for the bishop to develop, the light square bishop. Then pawn to a6 preventing the check, and then here a simple bishop to d3 developing the bishop, allowing room for castle, was played by white. Black responds by playing knight to c6, and then after castles, finally black plays pawn to e6. The game continues. Knight b to d2 was played by white. And something to note is that up to this position, black hasn't finished his development yet. He's still lagging behind. And as you can see, white has already finished up his development. So for this particular reason, black will be punished, and we're going to see how white capitalizes on this during the game. So black chose not to finish up his development, instead go for an early attack, but that will cost him during the game. So he goes for this move, queen to b6. It's usually an inaccuracy. It's not the best move in this position. The best move in this position will be to play bishop to e7, preparing to castle before launching to something like taking out your queen to b6. But nevertheless, queen to b6 was played. It is interesting also to note that in this kind of position, you can allow this move to be this pawn on b2 to be captured, and to continue by attack the queen once it has taken this pawn. So what will happen is that black will be forced to enter into a kind of defensive game, and after that, at the end of that particular line, you can actually regain your pawn back and become better off. You'll be better off in terms of position, but in materials will be down. So that is kind of a top level GM kind of play, whereby I usually see a GM is down in terms of material, but in terms of position, his pieces are better off. In this position, the best move is either to bring rook to c1, or rather to play something like pushing the pawn to a3, but not to defend this pawn. The game continued, and white responded by bringing the queen to b3. Then after takes, finally bishop to e7 by black. So the game continues, rook f to c1, and then knight to e4. It's interesting to note that white is trying to gather his pieces to launch for an attack, while black hasn't castled yet. He hasn't developed his light squared bishop, and sooner or later is going to pay for this. So it's really important to follow chess opening principles at times, unless you are a GM or unless you have seen a win that you can go for. But when in this kind of setup whereby things are not yet defined, you haven't entered into the middle game, it's usually important for you to follow chess opening principle, like castling early, developing your pieces before launching into an attack. So knight to e4 was played during the game, and then white responded by playing knight to e5. Now the move bishop to d7 was an inaccurate move. Interestingly, it's forced the move knight to e5 by white forces black to do something about his position, because otherwise he's going to lose a pawn. And bishop to d7 is not the best way to respond, because you are going to lose a pawn at the end of the line, and you're going to see how that happens. So the best move in this position is actually to counterattack by playing the move knight to b4, and here white will have to respond by dropping the bishop to something like e2, and the game will continue. But also picking up the knight, exchanging the knight will be a bad trade, because it will give the dark square bishop a tempi, and it will be in a better square, controlling these two diagonals, and that is not good for black. So during the game, Black responded by playing the move bishop to d7, and this actually loses a pawn. And the beauty about this game is that the chess master played the accurate moves and he was able to win that pawn, and this is how we did it. So first of all, you kick the knight by playing pawn to f3. The knight drops back. You pick up the knight, and then either way, no matter how black responds, either by picking up with the bishop or picking up with the pawn, you now introduce this nasty move knight a to f5, and this wins a pawn simply because since you have not castled, the rooks are not connected. So even if in this prior move black will pick up with the pawn, you still lose the pawn simply because of this nasty move knight to f5. So after knight to f5, black is forced to defend further by bringing the king to d7, protecting the bishop, but this still loses a pawn because of this brilliant move knight takes b7. You simply can't take because I'll give you a check right away and win the piece back. So I saw this move and I was amazed. It was a good move, a brilliant one. So black responded by after knight takes, black responded by bringing rook h to c8, and then here he gave a check, and then after bishop takes, rook takes, and now as you can see, white is better off. He has won a pawn, so it's good for white. So the game continues. Black drops the bishop back to b7, and then here white plays the move pawn to b4. Now this move pawn to b4 is really interesting because it protects the rook, and it also enters the possibility of creating a pass pawn. So here I must say that black didn't play the best move in this position. This is actually a bad trade for black. Simply after picking up the rook, you create a pass pawn, which will be kind of something you'll have to deal with, because as you can see, the bishop and the king are in a forkable square, so it's something you have to watch out. And also the bishop is eyeing at c7 square, so pushing up this pawn is actually something that will be bad for black. So brilliant play there from white. The best move will be in this position. Instead of picking up, it will be to drop the knight back. So after takes, king to c6 was played. After rook to b1, the sweet move bishop to c2, threatening a checkmate in one. So black has to respond, and he responded by taking the king to d7. After the move king to d7, you simply give a check again, and you can't pick the pawn again because of the checkmate threat, which will still be there. And then the king has to go somewhere else, and it goes to e7, and you push the pawn forward. The game continues. Knight to d7 is played by black, and then here the nasty move rook to b8, and this wins a knight. So after knight takes, the pawn promotes to a queen. After takes, the bishop picks up the rook, and it becomes white is better off in material. You can see white has the pair bishop while black has only the light squared bishop, and from here it's just a matter of simple conversion. Black tries to defend, but things are just worse for him, and after this move black was able to resign, and white won the game. That's how the game went. Thanks for watching. Let me hear your suggestions, your feedback in the comment section, and see you in my next recap. Bye bye for now.